Hey guys, it's Danimal MTG here for video 4 in my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set review and draft guide. Today we're going to be talking about the black cards in the set. If you haven't already, go back and watch my other 3 videos, starting with the multicolor, colorless, and lands, where I talk about mechanics, as well as my grading system as well. Let's get into it. First up today, we have Anchovy and Banana Pizza. 2 black for an artifact food at common. When this artifact enters, destroy target creature. 2 tap, sacrifice this artifact, you gain 3 life. This is reminiscent of Bake Into a Pie from original Eldraine, but at sorcery speed. 4 mana sorcery speed removal isn't premium, but this deals with anything and leaves behind a food to gain you some life and trigger disappear. Nothing fancy, but it'll do what it needs to do, giving this a 5. Armagon, Future Shark. 6 black for a 9/6 legendary creature, Shark Horror Mutant at rare. It has flash, and when Armagon enters, destroy up to 3 target creatures. Oh boy, this is a tricky one. If you can cast this, I don't really see how you lose the game. You're looking at a potential 5 for 1 here. The body, 3 creatures, and a creature that you can ambush block. And even if that value wasn't enough, you probably just win on the backswing, because at this point they probably don't have any blockers left and you have a 9/6. The problem will be casting it. If the format is slower, this may be the best card in the set, but there's not a ton of ramp or reanimation to work it out easier. The faster the format, the worse this gets. As much as I want to give this a 10, it's just so expensive. I'm going to give it a 9. Recognize that there's probably a little bias here and hope it's doable because I just love this card. Bebop, Warthog Warrior. 4 and a black for a 5/4 legendary creature, Boar Mutant Warrior at common. He has Menace, Rhinos you control have Menace, and Swamp Cycling for 2. This is a fun little combo with Rocksteady and green, as when you have them both out, they each become unblockable. Aside from that, the second line of text doesn't do much. This is just a 5 mana 5/4 Menace with Swamp Cycling attached. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. This is kind of the embodiment of the shrug emoji to me. 5. The Cloning of Shredder. 4 black for an Enchantment Saga and Mythic Rare. Chapter 1 says, exile target creature card from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it isn't legendary and is a mutant in addition to its other types. Chapters 2 and 3 both say, create a token that's a copy of a card exiled with this saga, except it isn't legendary and is a mutant in addition to its other types. If you have good ways to fill your graveyard, this looks pretty good. Problem is that it does nothing by itself, and if you don't have a good target in your yard, this does almost nothing. I mean, it can copy anything, but do you want to spend 6 mana to eventually make 2 or 3 drops? This will really just depend on how easy it is to fill your yard. Now, even with the 3-drop to copy, you are getting 9 mana value for 6 mana, as well as the 3 bodies, and it hopefully gets better from there. This is an intrinsic 3-for-1 with real upside. Just don't think it'll be insanely easy. Giving this an 8. Death in the Family. 1 and a black for an instant at uncommon. Exile target creature with mana value 3 or less. You will almost always have a target for this, but a lot of the time it isn't going to be able to hit what you actually need to remove. This is nice for the early game if your deck is a little bit slower, as it can help check a bit of early aggression. Exile is almost always better than Destroy, so that's nice as well. There doesn't really seem to be much graveyard synergy in the set either. It's okay, and you'll probably play 1 in most black decks, but you're really looking for better removal, especially in black. Giving this a 5. Dream Beavers. 1 black for a 1/1 creature, Beaver Nightmare at uncommon. It has flying, and when this creature enters, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Scry 1. This is great on 1 as it gives a 2-point life swing, some card selection, and now you have an evasive body on board. And with flying, it'll help you set up Sneak really early. Plus, when you sneak it out, you can get this ETB again. That being said, it's a really underwhelming top deck late. This is close to needing a build around, but I think it's just fine enough without Sneak to just give it a total grade of 6. You may cut this a decent amount if you don't have much Sneak in your deck. Foot Mystic. 3 and a black for a 2/4 creature, Human Ninja Warlock at common. Lifelink and Disappear. When this creature enters, if a permanent left the battlefield under your control this turn, create a 1/1 black ninja creature token. This is one of the few examples in the set where Disappear isn't an end step trigger, so pay attention if you play this card. With Disappear, it is a decent card. Without it, it's really underwhelming. The set has a few things going on that make triggering Disappear easier, but I've said in previous videos, these Morbid or Revolt type triggers are harder to make happen consistently than you think. I think with the floor being closer to the default mode of this card, I'm giving it a 4. Insectoid Exterminator, 2/2 for a creature insect mutant at common. As flying and Disappear at the beginning of your end step if a permanent left the battlefield under your control this turn, scry 1. Windrake stats just aren't what they used to be. When they have upside, they can still be playable, but this upside is both difficult to trigger and not insanely relevant. Card selection is always good, but even if this always scryed at your end step, I'm still not sure how much I would love this card. Flying has some extra buffs this set due to sneak, but if I was using this to sneak, I think I'd honestly rather have another Dreamweaver, giving this a 3. Lord Dreg, Insect Invader, 3 and a black for a 3/2 legendary creature insect warrior at uncommon. It has flying and Disappear at the beginning of your end step if a permanent left the battlefield under your control this turn, create a 1/1 black insect warrior creature token with flying. 3 and a green, sacrifice a token, draw a card. Another understated flyer with a Disappear trigger, but this trigger is both leagues better and easier to trigger as this has a built-in way to trigger it itself. You can basically turn the tokens it makes into cards and a new token. Now that's expensive and you're not really advancing your game state that way, but it is an option. What you really want is some mutagen or food tokens so that you can turn those bugs for cheap while also expanding your board state. All this really needs to make is one bug for you to feel fine about it, and anything more than that you feel great. Disappear is hard to do consistently, but this is the kind of trigger you want to work for, giving it a 7. Madame Null, Power Broker, 2 and a black for a 1/3 legendary creature Demon Advisor at rare. As Death Touch, and whenever another creature you control enters, you may pay life equal to its power. If you do, put that many +1/+1 counters on it. This seems decent to me. X3 Death Touch is a relevant body all game, and its ability is a May trigger, so if you can't spare the life, then you don't have to. If you have a lot of +1/+1 synergy or evasive creatures, this gets better too. And also pay attention to the fact that you have to do all or nothing with the life. If you play a 4X, you're either paying 0 or 4 life, not 1 or 2 just to give it a couple counters. But if you pair this with some of the food synergies in the set, you can certainly get your board to be huge, giving this a 7. Ninja Teen, 2 and a black for an enchantment class at rare. Level 1 says, whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. 1 and a black to get to level 2, creatures you control have +1/+0 and have menace. And 1 black to get to level 3, creature cards in your graveyard have sneak 3 and a black. You may cast creature spells from your graveyard using their sneak ability. I really want to like this card. Graveyard decks are my favorite, but it seems too slow. You have to spend 10 mana and bounce a creature before this actually adds to the board in a meaningful way. Level 1 helps you hold out, hopefully, and level 2 lets you sneak more easily, but otherwise the abilities kind of work against each other. Unless you're sneaking a bunch, creatures leaving means dying, and if they're dying, then they don't have menace and you can't use them to sneak. If this is a slower, value-driven set like Lorwyn Eclipse, then maybe it's a great value engine, but it just seems too slow to me. I'm starting it at a 3. Oroku Saki, Shredder Rising, 2 and a black for a 3/1 legendary creature human ninja at common. It has sneak for 1 and a black, and whenever Oroku Saki deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card and lose 1 life. As long as you can sneak this in, it's worth 2. A 2-mana 3/1 that draws a card and then trades off with something is a decent deal. There's almost no way it does more than that as it dies to a stiff breeze, but if you can get the first trigger, you'll be happy with it. Baby Shredder gets a 5. Pain 101, 1 and a black for an instant at common. Until end of turn, target creature gains Death Touch and, when this creature dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control. Black usually gets something like this, and I normally don't like it. It's interesting this set as there's a lot more incentive to block and trade. This will feel good when you turn your chump block into a trade that brings the body back. It also has the upsides of blanking removal on your creatures normally, but I'd personally rather use this to trade off for an opponent's creature. It wouldn't surprise me if it was lower, but due to the extra pressure on combat this set, I think I want to start this off at a 5. Paramecia coloniax, 1 and a black for a 2/2 creature zombie worm at uncommon. When this creature enters, mill 3 cards. When this creature dies, you may exile it. When you do, put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. I was really excited for this at first, as I thought its die trigger put the creature in your hand. Putting it back on top is so much less exciting, as it's no longer card advantage and just card selection. The milling help fuels itself, but there's really not too much going on in the graveyard this set, so it doesn't really help anything else. I think I'm skipping out on this one for the most part. It gets a 3. Rat King, Verminister, 1 and a black for a 1/1 legendary creature rat avatar at rare. It has Disappear. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent left the battlefield under your control this turn, create a 1/1 black rat creature token and put a +1/+1 counter on Rat King. Tap, sacrifice 3 rats, return target creature card and all other cards with the same name as that card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I like that this replaces some of your removed permanents on your turn. This can slowly grow and maybe you can get some value out of the second ability if you have multiples of the same card, but that's not going to happen very often. Just pay attention to the fact that you can only get 1 rat per turn, so you can't really go too crazy with this. This is another Disappear trigger that you feel good about working to trigger. Now starting stats are bad and you probably need to trigger this at least twice to feel okay about it, and that isn't always guaranteed, but this also isn't a must-kill immediate threat to your opponent, so you may get those 2 triggers before they think, oh crap, I should probably do something about that. And even though this is a rare, I think I'd maybe rather have Lord Dreg over this. I'll give Rat King a 6. Savanti Romero, Time's Exile, 3 black for a 4/4 legendary creature demon wizard at rare. He has Trample, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Savanti Romero. Then you draw X cards and lose X life, where X is the number of counters on Savanti Romero. This reminds me a lot of the Speed Demon from Ether Drift. The game becomes a little minigame of whether you can kill your opponents with your increasingly large creature and extra cards before your creature kills you, but the math is heavily in your favor. This is a little rough if your opponent comes out hard and fast and you're already a little low on life, but basically every other scenario has you coming out ahead. It's pretty much an automatic 2-for-1 since the ability can trigger on the turn you play it, which is a good place to start. This seems close to a bomb, but the times when your life are too low to effectively play him makes me want to start him out at a 6. Shark Shredder, Killer Clone, 2 black for a 4/4 legendary creature Shark Octopus Ninja at rare. Sneak, 3 black, first strike. Whenever Shark Shredder deals combat damage to a player, put up to 1 target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. It enters tapped and attacking. Someone in Wizards R&D really likes sharks, because this is another crazy strong shark card. First off, first strike, good. The combat trigger, good. Sneak for a first free combat trigger, good. Honestly, I'd be pretty happy with a 4/4 first strike for 4, full stop. It wouldn't be a bomb, but Wizards is pretty sparing with first strike nowadays because it makes combat a nightmare for the person facing it. With everything else this card has going on, it's a bomb. Real good. Side note that this can do a ton of damage out of nowhere because the card it brings back can't be blocked either, as Sneak works after blockers have been declared, so you could be doing 7 to 10 plus damage out of nowhere. This is Black's first 10. Shredder, Unrelenting, 4 and a black for a 6/4 legendary creature human ninja at uncommon. Sneak for 3 and a black, Death Touch. Whenever Shredder enters or attacks, another target creature you control gains Death Touch until end of turn. Death Touch on a 6-power creature seems a little overkill as it basically trades with anything anyway, but that doesn't really matter as the Death Touch is just upside. Either cost for this feels okay, with the Sneak cost obviously feeling way better, especially if you can turn a free block your opponent's had on a smaller creature of yours into a trade. In that case, this almost feels like Bone Shards on a creature. This isn't anything insane, but it'll be another tool in your Sneak decks. This gets a 6. Shredder's Armor, 1 and a black for an artifact equipment at uncommon. Equipped creature gets +2/+1. When this creature enters, attach it to target creature you control. Equip, sacrifice another non-land permanent. Activate only once each turn. I can see what R&D was thinking with this, as it's an easy and free way to trigger Disappear, but unless you have some way to make a crap ton of food, I don't want to keep throwing things away just to move this equipment. Even with mutagen tokens, I'd rather just crack the tokens for the counter instead if that's what I'm doing. The buff just really isn't all the work. Giving this a 2. Shredder's Revenge. 2 and a black for a sorcery at common. Choose one. Target player discards 2 cards, or target player draws 2 cards and loses 2 life. Black normally gets a 3 mana discard 2 spell and also normally gets a 3 mana draw 2 lose 2 life spell. The former usually isn't very good, and the latter is okay to good depending on the format. Putting them on the same card gives it some extra modality and buffs the card a decent amount. All that being said, I think this will just be okay. It'll certainly depend on the speed of the format. Putting this right in the middle at a 5. Shredder's Technique. 2 and a black for a sorcery at uncommon. Sneak for a black. Destroy target creature or enchantment. If an enchantment was destroyed this way, you lose 2 life. I always love when black gets a removal spell that can also hit enchantments, so this is cool. Sorcery speed murder is decent, but surprise 1 mana murder seems great. If you can get 1 unblocked creature through though, it almost doesn't matter how your opponent chose to block because you can kill blockers or valuable creatures that they tried to keep safe. You'll have to be very aware of this card when double blocking as well, because they'll be able to blow you up for just 1 mana and that'll really hurt. You'll normally aim this at a creature, but like I said, it's always nice to have the option to hit an enchantment as well. I think due to the setup for the sneak value, I'm just going to give this a 6 instead of a 7. Southwind Avatar. 3 and a black for a 3/4 creature, Snake Spirit Avatar at rare. It has Death Touch, and whenever another creature you control dies, you gain life equal to its toughness. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. This has a good relevant body for the cost. The first ability makes it hard for your opponent to take you down, and the second lets you slowly chip away at their life. Get some more lifelink and take them down even quicker. Now aside from food tokens, there isn't much life gain in the set, but every color has some access to food, so you'll probably have a couple. I'm going to give this a 7. Splinter, Hamato Yoshi. 1 and a black for a 1/3 legendary creature, Mutant Ninja Rat at uncommon. Sneak for a black. Menace. Other ninjas you control get +1/+1. This is cheap enough and there are enough ninjas in the set to seem pretty good. Lords for prevalent creature types always play well. This can also sort of work like a combat trick if you're able to sneak it out. Giving this a 6. Splinter's Technique. 3 and a black for a sorcery at rare. Sneak for 1 and a black. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle. Just don't play this card. Unless you have a card that says, I win the game when I cast it, this isn't worth it. Demonic Tutor isn't great in Limited, and this is Diabolic Tutor or Demonic Tutor with hoops to jump through. Don't let this trick you. Giving it a 1. Squirrelinoids is a black for 1/1 creature, Squirrel Mutant at common. It has Death Touch. This is nothing fancy, but it's a body that is relevant all game long and helps potentially enable some sneaky shenanigans as your opponents won't want to block this. Giving it a 5. Stomped by the Foot. 1 and a black for an instant at common. It has Kicker, sacrifice an artifact or creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. If the spell was kicked, that creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn instead. -2/-2 for 2 at instant speed always plays fine and sometimes works like a combat trick, and -5/-5 will kill almost anything. There seems to be enough sacrificial fodder for one-time sacrifice effects like this in the format. I think for the cost and how much it can trade up, I want to give this a 7. Super Shredder. 1 and a black for a 1/1 legendary creature, Mutant Ninja Human at Mythic Rare. It has Menace, and whenever another permanent leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Super Shredder. I don't love this. It's so easy to remove and a terrible top deck most of the time. If you don't get this on turn 2, it's never going to do much for you. Sacrifice outlets or mutagen tokens can certainly help with this, but I'm skeptical. It can certainly get big, but that's a lot of work for something that starts this small. I'm going to give it a 4, but it wouldn't surprise me if it went lower. Tunnel Rats. 1 and a black for a 2/2 creature rat at common. 4 and a black, return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. Another card that screams, use me for disappear triggers, but the return ability is so expensive. Sure, late game you may have the mana lying around to do it, but if I see my opponent spending 5 to bring back this 2/2, I'm probably breathing a sigh of relief. This gets a 4. And that's all of the black cards for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set review and draft guide. The next video will be on all the red cards in the format. If you like this video, like and subscribe and share it so that I can help out more people. Thanks.